Okay, question 14. Which code snippet would execute a circuit given these parameters? Measure the circuit 1,024 times, use the chasm simulator, and use a coupling map that connects 3 qubits linearly. So the most important things for this question are going to be the syntax for the execute method, which we'll pull up in a second, and also the coupling map is like the final stumbling block that some people might get caught up on. So it's the syntax for the execute function that kind of makes or breaks this question. So just kind of to look over the questions or the answers real quick, so we can have that in mind while we go over the documentation. We have all these options. Again, like we said in past videos, Qiskit will not try to trip you up with like this stuff. What they give you is typically safe, so they don't try to trick you up with it. I'm getting like a mic feedback somewhere. So what are we doing here? We're creating a quantum circuit with 3 qubits, and then insert the code fragment here. So we're going to look at these for our options. So what I would do for my studying is, and what I recommend for going through these questions is, go through them in parallel. So when you look at A, B, C, and D of line 1 of all of them, and then just go through parallel. So line 1, chasm sim, error.getBackend, chasm simulator. And then look for differences. For B, chasm sim, error.getBackend, IBM Q simulator. So here we see the 2 differences right here. So that might be something to tick us off, because there are multiple red flags in these problems that you can kind of catch. And if you want to keep an eye out for as many of those like layers of red flags, because it's not just one thing in most problems that's wrong. Normally there's two on average, 2 red flags that you're like, wait a minute, if they miss this first one, they can get the second one, so they can still figure out the problem. So here we see one red flag. Going through every problem in parallel, we see this is an immediate difference. So everything before them is the same, except that's the only difference. So one uses this thing called the chasm simulator, and one uses this thing called the IBM Q simulator. And we're going to see in a second, one of these is, some of these are real and some of these are made up. So we're going to just familiarize ourselves with the ones that are made up and which ones are not. So again, continuing in parallel, we have this first line of A we went through, the first line of B we're going through, the first line of C, chasm sim, so same setup, error.getBackend, chasm simulator. So here we have these being the same, so that's something we want to observe. For C, error.get, yeah. So those are the same. C, chasm simulator. And D, chasm sim, error.getBackend, chasm simulator. So here we have 3 of the same. So keeping that in mind, we can kind of have some educated guesses which one might be right, which one might be wrong. Going to the bottom here before we go to the code documentation, we'll go through the rationale of why each of them is right and wrong. So obviously A is the right answer. So let's start from the bottom. Again, it's the nitty-gritty stuff in the syntax. So you want to know what words are used. Shot for D is wrong because shot was used instead of shots. So this really requires you to familiarize yourself with the .execute function, which we'll look at. I guess since I mentioned it so many times, we can pull it up right now actually. So again, something we want to take away from this is how do we answer our questions if they do come up, if there's no one to ask questions to. So we want to try searching Qiskit API, let's see here, execute. So again, not everything we find is going to be what we're looking for. So we're going to open up a couple of these and see what we can kind of glean from the documentation. And something that's also useful is there's a kind of like a family of things called quantum circuit API, and this is a very important one right here. Quantum circuit. So if I had to place a bet, I would try searching this one first. So we're going to search this one for execute, the execute function. Execute, or command rather, method. So nothing immediately comes up. And here is where I would want to ideally find it. I'm not seeing it immediately though. D, E, X, then, so it's not there. Next result, Qiskit.execute function. Here we go. So here we have the options for parameters for the execute function. Parameters are just like how you want to customize it. So this is something you're going to want to familiarize yourself with. Keep this in mind. Let's go flip back and forth between this and what we're looking at. So again, this one uses SHOT. Let's see here, backend properties. So it goes experiment. This is important. Experiments, backend, then coupling map. So here, let's see here, and then shots will be, you can see here for D, chasm, coupling map, shots D. Oh, here we go. Okay, shot used instead of shot. Yeah. So it's going to be shot equals. Here we go. And this, it's a very nitty-gritty thing, but it's just the way the exam is. It's very syntax. It cares about syntax. It's plural. Shots equals, and it's very tiny, right? Shots equals, and then how many shots you want. And then if we look at the thing that the red flag that triggers us to knowing the problem is wrong is they use shot instead of shots. It's very tiny, right? But something you got to keep out for. So when you familiarize yourself with this execute function, it's those types of things. So shot was used instead of shots. And also incorrect syntax for execute. It's supposed to be the name, then the backend, then the shots, then the coupling map. Coupling map, yeah. So this right here is very important. This right, the last thing at the end of the page, it's supposed to be, this is the syntax for the execute function. It's supposed to be name, then backend, then shots, then coupling map. Some of these questions are wrong because they have this order wrong. And if the order is wrong, it's incorrect. So this is very important to keep in mind for this execute function. So D is wrong because shot was used instead of shots, just looking at the syntax, and then the execute function is supposed to be this. C was wrong because repeat was used instead of shots. So same problem. If we know here shots equal, we're going to go one up. It's going to say repeat equal. For C, let's see here. And it says repeat equal 1024. That's just not how it's written, right? Repeat equal 10. I don't have my highlighters today, so I'm going on a highlighter. So that's just not the syntax. It's supposed to be shots equals. And again, the same highlighting, same thing that's highlighted once it comes up. Shots equals. So in order to define how many shots and how many times you want to run it, it's going to be that. So that's why C was wrong, because it said repeat equals instead of shots equals. Okay. And then B is wrong because it uses a simulator that doesn't exist. This IBM Q simulator doesn't exist. The execute syntax is also incorrect. And then loop was used instead of shot. So like I said, there are multiple layers of red flags that you can ideally identify to tell something's wrong. So that way if you miss one layer, you can still catch the second or third one. It's like, wait a minute, there are multiple things wrong here. So hopefully you catch the second or third ones if you miss the first. So we went in parallel, question by question, and this chasm simulator, this IBM Q simulator stood out because all the other three ones use chasm simulators and then use IBM Q. So that's kind of like an educated guess we can kind of make. So that's the first layer. That simulator doesn't exist. And you can also look to see what backends are available. Backends by typing Qiskit API backends. This might take more time than I think because offhand, I don't remember IBM Q. I don't remember looking this up beforehand today, so it would have to do some digging, more than just like surface level. Qiskit API, IBM Q. No. Chasm simulator. And then we're probably going to find the answer by looking at the air simulators, to be honest. Simulator. So we're going to open this. Simulators, here we go. And it's going to be, we can also, let's get air simulators. Everything got renamed. It's a very living thing. Air is kind of no longer used, and they might call it either machine learning or business or something like that. So let's search this. Chasm. Nothing here. Simulators, here we go. Air provider, here we go, air simulators. So here we have this air simulator, which is a valid backend. Actually, I'll just do this. The answer is, here we go. Which of the three simulators are available used in basic air? I'm not showing. from a later question, 16. So these are the 3 simulators. We have state vector simulator and unitary simulator. So those are the ones that are available in basic air. So instead of me rummaging through the documentation, you can also search basic air simulators. Those are the 3 simulators in basic air. So then the execute syntax was incorrect, and then it also used loop instead of shots. So again, all three of them, have not being the keyword that's used. One of them used shot, one of them used loop, and one of them used repeat. So that's also a large layer of red flags to keep an eye out for. So overall in this question, we saw to go through the answers in parallel to see what some of the differences are we can spot out. Use those differences to kind of have an educated guess onto which one's the right one, and then really familiarizing ourselves with the execute syntax. So again, right here at the bottom, execute is supposed to be the name of the circuit you're using the method on. Yeah, the name of the circuit, the backend, shots, and then coupling map. So coupling map is asked on a later question too, I think maybe the next one. But yeah, so name, backend, shots, coupling map. Really familiarize yourself with how the syntax is for this question.